Greetings from the tavern, everybody. Welcome for another day of Hearthstone Grandmasters in the Americas region. My name is Frodan, joined by TJ Sanders, and together we're going to wrap up Week 5 as we come closer to finding out who is going to be getting those elusive spots in the Global Finals at BlizzCon 2019. It's September 22nd, 2019, TJ. And on this day in history, in 1862, Abraham Lincoln issued a proclamation that all the slaves would be freed by January 1st, and of course, making a big move both politically and, well, socially at the time, hundreds of years ago.
The Emancipation Proclamation?
It was a really defining period of time in American history.
Yeah.
And, you know, nothing quite like that happening in Grandmasters in terms of the social justice scale, but we also may be having some freedom for some of these players today, TJ, because based off the standings, some players may be home free for playoffs.
Yeah.
If Just Sand gets his win today, he locks in the playoff spot. The last 2 weeks will be purely playing for position, and then all of a sudden, one door closes for another player that's between 2 and 7. Of course, that 8th place spot, the door closes forever.
Forever, yeah. You know, I wonder if social media had existed in 1862.
Woo! I really, those tweets would not age well.
No,
Let's just say,
no, they would
let's just
not.
make that clear.
Yeah.
Stonewall Jackson would not have a job today.
But I'm sure you'd have a lot of followers. That's for sure. Just to watch it unfold.
Well, there was less people alive back then, so I don't think the engagement would be quite that high. But I'm sure Robert E. Lee and fellow company would be under hot water.
Yeah.
Based off the social justice movements. Well, taking a look at Division B, we kind of mentioned that. Hussein gets his win and goes to 9-1 today against Amnesiac. Amnesiac moves to 5-5, and even if Satan loses out, he ends at 9-5, which means that he was guaranteed to make playoffs because no one else can really catch him in that regard. Because everyone after today gets only 4 to play, so they can at most add 4 wins, which means Stan would at worst tie for 3rd.
Yeah, that's right. And on the Division A side, the left side of the bracket there, 6 out of the 8 players are within one game or one match of first place. It's a much different story.
Wild, Wild West.
Yeah, we have 2 players that are fighting for relegation, but outside of that, it's pretty much anybody's game for who can take first seed and, let alone who can qualify for the playoffs. So, a lot of those players will be playing a match today to round off their week, and then there's only 2 weeks of regular season play left. So this is
4 games, DJ.
Yeah.
2 weeks sounds like a lot in the big grand scheme of things when you say, oh, you have 7 weeks of play. 2 weeks is a big sizable chunk. But when you only narrow it down to 4 individual best of 3s, it starts to rack up the tension real good. The clock is ticking.
It is. We're not going to start that again today. I think we got the last laugh at the end of the broadcast yesterday. But yeah, players are running out of time, and it makes it exciting for us because hopefully, fingers crossed, we're not going to get relegated, and we're not going to miss playoffs. But
I'm not getting relegated. I'm making it playoffs.
I'll be here for playoffs. I will in some form or another.
See.
I'll be here for playoffs.
We shall see.
We shall see.
Our featured deck for today is going to be a matchup that we actually see very early on. It's Firebat's Highlander Warrior. Yesterday, the deck didn't get the win, but it played a crucial role in the series in terms of deterrent and also maybe causing confusion. A lot of people still don't understand this deck, but the more I play with Firebat's decks, the more I realize that they are very, very good at doing one specific thing. In a lot of cases, Firebat just wants to shut down the aggro and, more importantly, be able to handle Priest. However, we've seen a lot of the Warriors struggle with closing games, and as a result, big comebacks are made. One thing that this Highlander Warrior is able to do compared to others is disrupt with things like Hecklebot, and also find a way to utilize things like Siamat and, of course, Zephyrus to close out the game when a lot of times Warriors don't have anything proactive. They usually have an Elysiana game.
Yeah, it also gives them an extra emergency removal, which sometimes they can struggle with. If they leave 1 minion on the board, it snowballs. And a lot of players may ask him, well, why don't you just play like more redundant removal, like add in a second Plague of Wrath, put in more silences? But Highlander or Control Warrior in general tends to play a good amount of one-ups, right? You have all the legendaries with Ziliax, Dr. Boom Mad Genius, Archivist Elysiana, and with the current metagame, you kind of need a silence. Hecklebot to disrupt the combo decks. You start to look at your deck and you think, I have a lot of one-ups. Can I sacrifice a little more to make Zephrys consistent? And Firebat, that's what he did. And, I think it has the potential to work. We're seeing Highlander Warrior become more popular on ladder, maybe because of Firebat, maybe just because people are realizing that it's a good deck. And I'm excited to see it in action today. And, potentially it's Conquest Shield, it may not. But I am excited for the potential of seeing it today.
We have some news for you, TJ. The first band
Breaking
is in.
news?
Firebat is in the first series going up against Eddie, and he has protected his Highlander Warrior. We'll tell you all about it after the jump. We're going to take our first break of Sunday here for Week 5 of Hearthstone Grandmasters. When we come back, let's get Firebat versus Eddie underway.
Home to many competitive formats, each with their own unique variants and rules. Today, we're going to break down one of them, the Shield Phase Conquest format. And here's how it works. To start, both players bring 4 decks, each from a unique class. The match starts with a Shield Phase. This is where both players choose one of their own decks to protect, making it ineligible to be banned. Once the Protect phase has ended, both players will then ban one of their opponent's decks, removing it from the pool. Each player then selects which of their remaining decks they would like to play first, before beginning the first game of the series. When the first game of the series is over, the winner's deck is removed from their pool of eligible decks. Both players then select the next deck they would like to play. The loser of the first game can choose to replay with the deck they lost with, or they can choose one of their other 2 available decks. In Best of 3 conquests, the first player to 2 wins is the victor. In Best of 5 series, such as those in the semifinals or finals of major events, the first player that makes it to 3 wins takes the W. It's that easy. Shield Phase Conquest allows players to showcase their skill set across different classes, while still giving them the opportunity to play the deck they're most confident with. Now that you've got the download on Shield Phase Conquest, we wish you well on your deck building adventures.
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tombs, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do. There might be magic monsters, mummies in the markets, and ancient mysticism. But this league's gonna save the world.
Eddie versus Firebat starts off with very much a familiar set of phases. It is Anduin versus Anduin, Priest versus Priest, or perhaps it might be Lunara, perhaps it'll be Madame Luzul. Either way, it's going to be a Priest mirror to start things off, but we take a quick look at the series. That might be the only thing that is of the norm, as we do have the Highlander Warrior protected and the Reno Mage banned. Now, TJ, when was the last time you can remember Reno Mage being banned in Hearthstone Grandmasters?
Week 1.
That was not the last time it was.
Then last week.
Yes, last week. Muzzy banned it against Purple.
Yeah.
Or rather, Purple banned it against Muzzy.
Yeah.
Muzzy brought the Reno Mage and was the only respect ban. Since then, we've had on average about 1 or 2 Reno Mage bans per week, but generally it's a deck that's not respected very often. Why respect it here, TJ? Mainly because In my opinion, not only is the mage heavy removal for decks like Priest, but it's got a lot of armor gain. If you're playing OTK Paladin, you're playing Malagos Druid and whatnots, and there's a lot of ways for it to get messed up. Maybe the armor gain's enough, but at the same time, Malagos Druid and all those other decks have infinite damage, it feels like. So I got to ask Eddie about that one because Reno Mage Band is definitely something worth considering. There's a lot of mind games going into it. Now, let's go into the first game, Priest versus Priest. Firebat with the Psychopomp keep.
Did he keep anything else?
No, I think he threw away the other 2 cards, it looks like to me.
Psychopomp is interesting because it gives you 3 bodies that your opponent needs to kill in order to keep board control. But it is inconsistent if you're not keeping something along with it. Especially if you need to open up with like a Light Warden or a Northshire Cleric. By the time that's getting back onto the board with the Reborn effect, usually your opponent has a lot of ways to attack into it. So sometimes it can be an issue. It's not that high of a win rate card on the play against Priest either. Obviously, the keys are Northshire Cleric, Light Warden, Injured Tolvir, Circle of Healing, Powerwood Shield. Inner Fire is up there for Priest in the mirror matchup, just because it allows you to make better trades in the early game. But Eddie's going to think for a while and then play a Northshire Cleric.
Seems like that is going to be the key here, because Northshire Cleric still does challenge everything that Firebat can do, because if he develops anything, you can attack and heal. But the Injured Blade Master going into turn number 3 seems to be a hard card for other priests to deal with, which is why I'm looking at that Wild Pyromancer as potentially being something that Eddie's going to lean on. The question is it going to be enough? I argue no. I think that Wild Pyromancer is great, but I think it's a very reactive card, and this is a very proactive deck. And so that usually, to me, means that you anticipate losing the board, and you have to think of comeback potentials. And I feel like that's a really pessimistic move. So I like this move, actually, from the Wild Pyromancer, just getting ahead of what Firebat can play, and then utilizing the damage that can be generated from it.
Yeah, but this is kind of on Firebat to develop a counter push, because Eddie is in a position where he has board, he can keep the trades rolling. Oh my goodness. Picks up Circle of Healing.
It's huge. He's going to be able to draw 3 cards at least from that.
Yeah, now he could go for Coin Nephroset Ritualist and then trade off the Wild Pyromancer. Because the thing about Circle of Healing is if he Circle of Healings first, then he ends up healing up the Injured Blade Master. So while he's drawing a ton of cards, he's also giving Firebat some semblance of control over the board. He could use this Beaming Sidekick, then trade in, and then Circle of Healing. Could even Beaming Sidekick, trade in, Powerwood Shield, Circle of Healing. Or just coin and kill off the Injured Blade Master that way.
Yeah, but of course, Firebat knows that this was more than a possibility. It was a likelihood that the Injured Blade Master would die. But it's just the extent of which the healing and the card draw goes is pretty brutal. However, we have seen players get out-tempoed in this matchup. It doesn't matter about the resources nearly as much as the board presence. Double Psychopomp. Woo! Well, the thing about the second Psychopomp is a lot worse when the first one dies.
Yeah, and it's a problem for Firebat because Eddie has the Wild Pyromancer, which means that he's got so many ways to try and clean things up. And after he just drew that many cards, it's difficult for Firebat to hope that he can just keep playing a thing and trying to fight for the board that way.
Yeah, the Ritualist is really powerful in this spot to heal back everything that Firebat is trying to weaken his opponent's board by letting him play spells.
Hey, I got you, friend. In the light's name.
Perfect sequencing here from Eddie. Draws all these cards.
Oh my goodness.
He's just so far ahead in tempo, and then the resources. Just drawing so many more cards. Look at the deck difference between these two players. 15 to 23 before turn 5. He's drawn 8 more cards.
Well, he gets another injured Blade Master. I
Yeah.
mean, that's something, right?
It is.
Hey, I got you, friend.
It is, and it's something that Firebat needs in order to climb back in this game, but Eddie was pretty close to maybe even killing Firebat if he had a inner fire of some sort. This game feels very much over. Northshire Cleric on 1, nothing here from Firebat.
Yeah.
The Psycho Pomp plays was definitely a good idea. However, that you can even see right in front of you that Psycho Pomp is considered already the late game.
Pretty much.
Yeah, the early game turns is kind of like how you're playing the first turn or two, and then turn 3 is kind of like the mid game pivot point. Turn 4 to 5 is when you start transitioning to your late game options.
Yeah, with how explosive these decks can be, oftentimes you have like these pretty massive boards, so super early on in the game. And it's about who can, wrestle control of it first and keep hold of it. And Eddie was able to do that because of 1, just his start, and 2, his ability to draw that many cards because of the Northshire Cleric on 1. And, I mean, with the way that this turn is looking out,
Looks like
he might be dead on board.
Yeah, I think he knows about the More Arms.
Yeah.
So if he plays the Indratovir,
Life is enough.
Yeah, this is a play to just avoid giving the Light Warden any additional attack, because that's the only way that Firebat survives. It looks backwards, but
yeah, he's alive by 1 HP in his mind.
yeah, otherwise More Arms comes out, one thing trades over, he heals, and then the Light Warden would hit him for enough. I mean,
He needs to come back tool with the Wild Pyromancer also to
Yeah.
wrap it up. But that's going to do it for game 1. Eddie with the good hand and the good place.
yeah,
Nothing really much else to talk about
Yeah.
as we go into game number 2. But again, this kind of calls into what we were talking about throughout the weeks, which is a lot of players are starting Priest for game number 1. And if you're going to protect your warrior, is that an opportunity to put in that Highlander Warrior, or is it not that good against Priest? That's the questions that we should be asking Firebat if we get a chance to talk to him, because most players, and I think Eddie is one of them, have just been starting Priest every single game.
Yeah.
And that predictability sometimes is very good, obviously, because Priest is a great deck for a good reason. But then sometimes it's what costs you.
I'd like to get Firebat's thoughts on how he thinks Highlander Warrior does against the Priest compared to normal Control Warrior. But Firebat would have an advantage in the mirror, but he'd have what seems like a disadvantage against the Druid, which was protected. The mirror for Eddie doesn't even have Archivist Feliciana. It's got like Blatant Decoy and a ton of removal.
Sure.
So it's kind of a risk for him. So, maybe Firebat was cornered into the Priest, and a lot of players think that it's better to take that Priest mirror matchup and like essentially bring it down to a best of 1, is what a lot of them say, than try and risk queuing into a bad matchup. So I don't blame him at all.
All right, let's go ahead and take our second break rather, of the day. And when we come back, we're going to have Firebat continue versus Eddie here.
Legends say powerful treasures are hidden everywhere here in Aldum.
If we hope to defeat Rafam, we'll need as many as we can get. He's already unleashed the ancient plague lords and countless monsters. Keep them distracted, Reno.
Not a problem. This plan is totally gonna work. Ain't that right, Finley?
Oh, yes! I have them right, Red Eye!
There is an artifact here. The name is...
The Scales of Justice! Oh, it must be really fancy!
only to be used in a time of great peril. Yes, I think this qualifies.
Hey, look, Finley! You've lured one of the Plague Lords!
Take this, fiend!
In the face! Yeah! Hey, guys! Get that treasure! We've got a Plague Lord to destroy!
Yes, please, hurry!
Not to worry, Finley! We'll just push this thing right here.
No, that's a trap. Watch out!
It's all good. I am totally tired.
Gracious me!
What we actually need to do is press this. And there. A fish.
No! It's the scales of justice!
Ah, who wants to use it first?
Ooh, I do! Me! On second thought, maybe give it to Finley?
All you had to do was hold a rope.
Here we go, blaming the tall, ruggedly handsome guy again.
My name is Eddie Liu, formerly Sehun628. Now it's just Eddie playing. My last year I had a pretty successful year, especially since I only played this game for 2 years. I won DreamHack Atlanta. It's only a tour stall, but it meant a lot to me, especially since I was grinding really hard for a win. When I first knew that, like I received the email that I got into Grandmaster, I was really excited. I checked my email at like 10:30 and I was like hyped. I was like, oh my God, is this actually real? I think I'm a very consistent player. I think the X factor for myself is that I hate playing aggro decks, I would say. I'm a very control/anti-control player. I rather outgrind my opponent in resources. I constantly judge myself, oh, is this right? Is what I'm doing correct? And it means a lot. It means a lot to me that if other people are agreeing what I do and what I think. At this point, I just want to make Worlds. I had a pretty good record in Tour Stop. I think I was at least top 10, if not top 5. I think I was lucky. I think this group is the easier group, and I think I have a good chance getting out of groups.
Eddie turns to Warrior for game number 2, and Firebat is picking his Priest into the Warrior. So this could be a situation where we see the Priest drop 2 games in a row because Warrior has been one of the predators for Priest. Priest is not by any means an infallible deck. Many reasons why people are choosing to side with Priest because of its overwhelming dominance of the early game, and if Priest what feels like to be auto-win a good portion of the games in the early stage, it's a really powerful deck that forces players to, well, adapt their strategy to it. So we're going to go do Warrior versus Priest, which is, you know, for Firebat fans, kind of cross your fingers moment here. And I think Firebat feels like he might have to do this because if he plays Paladin versus the Warrior, that might be a situation where he might struggle.
Yeah, the blatant decoy is insane tech, plus this deck is pretty much all removal. There's no Elysiana for Eddie. It's just all armor gain, removal, disruption, everything you could imagine that makes a Paladin life miserable. And as we saw yesterday, the matchup against Malagos Druid feels like it's hard. It feels almost unwinnable. Firebat went with the pressure plan with his Highlander Warrior against Malagos Druid, and it still just wasn't enough. At the end of the day to get the job done. He ended up winning the series, I believe.
Yep, I agree with you, TJ. I think that the matchup looks hard, but when we talked to Firebat in the interview yesterday, he said that he felt like his opponent had to get lucky to win, which was a very interesting, optimistic tone, given that A lot of times, I think Warrior struggles to put the right amount of pressure on the Druid, and when Druid lands like that 60 damage combo, it feels like they can't armor out of that range.
Yeah.
How can they put on that pressure? So that naturally makes it feel like a bad matchup.
Firebat approached the matchup, I think, super well. He went for key pressure turns and recognized what his opponent had to do to win, and recognized that he had to get a little bit lucky to win, and the fact that the Dream Petal Florist need to kind of whiff twice. He approached it correctly, but it still feels difficult. But now moving into this one, I think Eddie's Warrior deck is even more of a favorite than you normally consider Warrior decks. He's got Spellbreaker in there, the double Brawl, double Plague of Wrath. He's got Militia Commander on top of the 2 Restless Mummies, so just another way to fight for early board. He's got double Weapons Project.
Yeah, the Weapons Project was really scary here to Firebat. He could play this Light Ward instead, and we've seen Amnesiac actually in a very similar situation yesterday do exactly that. Firebat gonna play around that Weapons Project. It's not in the hand, but Eddie could have drawn it or have kept it, because remember, he kept 2 cards. No, he kept only 1 card in the opening mulligan. Apologies. It's good on Firebat to still respect that, because you never know if they have the Weapons Project and you lose that Northshire Cleric.
Yep.
So Firebat has the ability to draw 2 cards here with the Circle of Healing versus just 1 with his hero power. But the nice thing is that he can actually Light Warden with this as well. Chooses instead just to take it slow and heal first.
Yep.
Instead of developing onto the board.
I think High Priest Ahmet maybe making his decision a little bit different. Because he knows that this Light Warden could come down later on as a 7 health Light Warden.
It's true.
But this does open up the ability for Eddie to clear the board with the Shield Slam. And now Firebat knows that both Restless Mummy and Militia Commander are options on turn 4 for removal for Eddie. So maybe on a path to trying to stick this Injured Tolvir and res it with the Psychopomp.
I must consider.
This can feel like a daunting task to try and stick a board against Warrior. Because it's not only about sticking a board, it's about trying to build that board big enough to win the game before the Warrior hits that critical mass of removal.
At the same time, is there any merits for Firebat to lean into the card draw aspect of it? Like, let's say he plays Acolyted Pain. Anything that comes out of the Psychopomp, the Acolyted Pain, and Northshire Cleric are going to lead to more card draw. If he plays Acolyted Pain and the Restless Mummy comes and snipes it down, and Psychopomp provides the Northshire Cleric, that's 3 more cards that he can draw.
That's true.
With a Circle of Healing.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the Injured Tolvir Light Warden play. I do. I like it a lot for the reasons why you mentioned, but I think Firebat hesitated and just evaluated, like, yeah, maybe it isn't that bad of an idea to go for that type of setup.
Yeah, because now if Restless Mummy does come out, or Militia Commander even,
he has to lose everything.
He has to lose everything. Yeah, he would have, if it was Militia Commander, which is less likely, because there's 2 Restless Mummies from Militia Commander and a Ziliax, then he would be left with something on the board, but he actually wouldn't be able to clear the Light Warden if it was Militia Commander. If it's Restless Mummy, Eddie has to trade off his entire board, which means that Firebat gets to drop High Priest Ahmet on a clear board without the Restless Mummy or without the Rush Minion from the Town Crier that was pulled out. And honestly, that has to be on Eddie's mind. And if that's the case, is there any room for deviation? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think you're going to let Priest take control of the board, and I think you have to kill that Light Warden. It's too much of a threat. The Tolvir is definitely intimidating, but the Light Warden getting stronger every single turn is not acceptable, I think, as a Warrior player. It's way too much damage, way too much of a threat. And that leaves Firebat the ability just to play Ahmet on board.
Yep, and with Ahmet being played on board,
the Shield Slam already used.
Psychopomp has a huge upside. Is that a
oh my
Spellbreaker?
Goodness!
Woo!
At the same time, though, it's a silence, and it's... I mean, the Psychopomp putting 7 health minions would have been a big problem. Make no mistake. And that's a really important draw. But at the same time, that's like another way for Firebat to dodge the removal, right? Like, in terms of, like, let's say he goes for a Divine Spirit Inner Fire for only, like, a 10-10 or a 14-14. That's harder for Eddie to deal with now.
Yeah.
So, Ahmet still pulling out some stuff. And Firebat does have an opportunity to make the Psycho Pump even better through an Injured Blade Master now. So now he would have Injured Blade Master, Injured Tol'Vir, a Light Warden, Northshire Cleric, and High Priest Amet die. That's a pretty high quality res pool, relatively speaking, when you start playing 5 minions from Priest, because you're not playing any Beaming Sidekicks or Ritualists.
I wonder.
You know, all the cards that are more utility and less on the power is not in the pool. So I like playing this Injured Blade Master for those reasons.
Yeah.
I wonder if Firebat wants to use the Holy Ripper in this position, just to clear off the board a little bit. And if the bonus is that if your opponent does play Plague of Wrath or something equivalent to that, those 2 minions go in the pool for Psycho.
2 minions go in the pool, absolutely. Noticing the Holy Ripple, Firebat's list is a little bit different than the standard Hunter Ace version of the list. He does not have Bwansamdi and does not have 2 Beaming Sidekicks. Instead, he has the 1 Beaming Sidekick and 2 Holy Ripples.
So now, from Firebat's perspective, what do you think about double trading into this 3-4 and then trying to just make the res pool that much better?
Oh, man.
You're basically giving up a 2-2. Although it's not as clear-cut as that. But if you play the Amet, or if you resurrect the Amet, the payoff is pretty high, because then he's going to be able to get Wild Pyromancer or Beaming Sidekick onto the board.
I like that because I don't think this 2-2 is doing anything. Right?
Yeah.
If you're just trading the Injured Blade Master, sure, your res pool still gets better. But what is this 2-2 really doing? It's making Brawl better.
Oh, this is interesting.
He really wants Amet.
And he doesn't get the Amet, doesn't get the Injured Tol'Vir. But he does get a card draw source through this Cleric. He might even get Circle of Healing again. So Firebat's got to be disappointed. He really wanted Amet to help blow it out.
Yeah.
And in a way, because Eddie drew that Brawl, had Firebat gone for like an Amet and a little bit more board presence, I kind of wonder if Eddie would have just pulled the trigger on that Brawl.
Hold on to the Town Crier here not to give Firebat attacks for card draw. Is there an opportunity?
Yeah, you can draw cards here. You can Pyromancer, Beaming Sidekick, Divine Spirit, then Ritualist for 2 cards. You've put out a wide board, which is pretty vulnerable to specifically Warpath.
Yeah, especially since if you wanted to keep the Psycho Pump around.
But do you?
I guess not.
Part of the problem with Psycho Pump is that it makes a bad Brawl outcome.
He could Acolyte of Pain and make himself stronger against Warpath.
Oh yeah, Acolyte of Pain might be better. I think the Ritualist draw 2 cards is also very strong.
Yeah, and also the Northshire Cleric wouldn't be vulnerable to Warpath in this scenario either.
Exactly, and it's like damage. It keeps your card draw source. I like it.
Yeah, 2 cards.
Inner Fire.
All right.
And with the silence being used, that's kind of what we're talking about. Like, even though the silence on the Amet was not ideal whatsoever, Eddie wishes he had like another silence for this situation, because it would be much more manageable.
Yeah.
Right now, like Shield Slam #2 wouldn't even deal with the Cleric entirely. This might be something that Eddie considers brawling, but we'll see what he gets off the Town Crier. Gets the Restless Mummy. This Brawl has some pretty big implications.
Ooh, Warpath clears this up.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Again.
High upside with High Priest Amet?
Oh,
okay.
an Injured Blade Master. Okay, that's still very powerful.
Yeah. And honestly, with the Brawl scene, I'd probably throw in the Acolyte of Pain just because his hand is terrible. I mean, this is a pretty all-in state from Firebat.
Wait a second. TJ.
What?
A second Brawl got drawn.
Yeah, I mean, this deck is just pretty much all removal. It's
all
insane.
removal and tech cards. And I think that Firebat, without playing the Bwansamdi list, might be helping Eddie a little too much, right? In the sense that he doesn't have as much card draw to go off, so he doesn't have that Hail Mary.
Yeah, I think even with Bwansamdi, this matchup would still be pretty bad just because of how Eddie has decided to construct his list.
Oh, of course. I'm not taking away that.
Yeah. And, you know, now Firebat's in a position where, again, he just has to hope that second Brawl's not there, that Eddie doesn't have a way to, like, activate Warpath if he has it in hand, doesn't have mechs to rush in to kill all these minions. This is a very optimistic position for the game for Firebat, or he has to have an optimistic look on the game.
So Eddie has most likely a clear here. Brawl number 2. Acolyte survives, which might be a really important thing here for Firebat because if you're going to pick one minion to live, you probably want the one that gives you card draw.
Yeah,
if everything else is going to die.
Honestly, with no Bwansamdi, with both Psychopomps used, with High Priest on net used, his draws off the top are just pretty weak. So, and from Eddie's perspective, that's both injured Blade Masters, both injured Tolvirs, High Priest on net, both Psychopomps.
Yeah. Firebat's going to concede. Eddie's anti-everything warrior. Anti-minion, anti-card warrior.
The only thing it's not is an anti-warrior warrior.
Which is fine.
Which is fine. I mean, if you don't put yourself in a position where you're going to get mirror matchups very often, it's great. But, you know, it feels like it's just for the priest, honestly, if you think about it, and just combo decks in general. The blatant decoy in there does give it game against Malagos Druid.
Got it.
Because you can pull up the Malagos once they, as long as they have a full setup turn before. So you can disrupt all these combo decks, and Holy Wrath Paladin is another one that it does great against because the blatant decoy will pull up the Cheval later on in the game. So I like the choices and paying off for Eddie.
It certainly is. Let's go ahead and check in with Eddie here, who is joining us for an interview. Eddie, can you hear us?
Yeah, how are you guys doing?
Doing all right, not too bad. Currently sitting at 7-3 and in prime position to get to playoffs. Let's talk a little bit going into this match. The protect ban strategy, you end up banning Reno Mage. That's a very unpopular choice in terms of just representation. Whenever Reno Mage is played, it tends to be let through. Why ban Reno Mage in this position?
I think it's just because, like, if you see my lineup, like, against Galen this Friday, I normally tend to ban the third or fourth deck instead of, like, the popular decks are Paladin and then Priest, right? And that's kind of what my lineup is trying to do. Like, there is Question, which is in favor versus Priest, but all other decks are pretty good against Priest. And so I normally tend to ban the third or the fourth deck, depends on how they do the protect. So for example, against Galen, I knew I was going to ban Reno Hunter against Galen because it just fits really well against my lineup. And against Firebat, he protected Warrior, so I just banned the Mage. If he protected Mage, I just banned the Warrior. It didn't really change that much.
Got it. When you take a look at like your deck list, you have a bunch of interesting tech stuff. I think the blatant decoy in the Warrior is probably the coolest one. That's directly trying to kill like the Shirvalos and stuff, right?
Yeah, this is a tech for Malagos Druid, and because I feel like it rise popularity, and I personally think it's a really good deck. That's why I brought it. But Firebat didn't. I think Galen didn't either. No, actually Galen did bring it. Never mind. So yeah, it was a pretty good tech, but Galen didn't have Holy Wrath Paladin, and Firebat did. So it hit one out of the two decks, which I was really wanted to hit with the Warrior. Because if you look at Warrior against like standard control Warrior against Malagos Druid, it's against any good players, it's probably around 5% at most.
Yeah, feels like
because they just do the combo, right? And you have no way to interfere with that. So I think this is a pretty good choice of tech card. You didn't get to see it, but it makes me so confident against Paladin matchup because since you I don't know the stats for GM for Paladin versus Control Warrior, but personally when I play Paladin, I think Paladin is favored unless you have like a huge amount of tech card, and this is just on top of it, so I lock down a lot of like weird precision that I might lose the game and just win with this.
Would you like to know the stats for Control Warrior versus OTK Paladin post-patch, post-nerf patch? This is thanks to A-Bar, by the way.
Sure. I think my guess is probably Paladin favored by a little bit. I don't know, but
You're exactly right. It's 7-5 in favor of OTK Paladin. Before this week, we usually count the stats retroactively after the week is finished.
Yeah, that's why I feel like it's not as good as before, like last patch, since Paladin just kind of got upgraded and Warrior didn't really do much and Dr. Boom got nerfed. So a lot of things in combined, I think Paladin's just favoring the matchup. So wanted a tech card, and I didn't want Iziana because I feel like I wasn't expecting Warrior that much, and Firebat did have Warrior, which kind of sad, but didn't hit that matchup so good.
Yeah, he's got that Highlander Warrior. This will be our last question here. Do you have any thoughts on the Highlander Warrior? It's a very unusual deck, I think.
I think his build is very cool. He has double Whirlwind, double Shield Block, and double Brawl. So he has kind of like the removal tools, but he also has like Zephyr, because Zephyr can win a lot of unwinnable situations because how diverse the range they give you. Like sometimes you need burst for Bloodlust, or sometimes you need removal, sometimes you need heal. It's just very flexible. Of course you reduce some consistency for your deck because you run a lot of 1-ups, but maybe it's good. I don't know.
Yeah, consistency isn't something you really need when you only play 1 or 2 games of it in a best of 3.
Yeah.
So you just need to be able to get the right side of the deck.
Yeah.
Eddie, thanks for all the time that you're able to dedicate. This was a great interview. Congratulations, you're 7-3 in good position to end with another playoff spurs. Good luck next week.
Thank you. Yeah, take care.